we could just take a minute, breathe, take some space. If you're listening and it's safe to do so, the invitation to close your eyes. Put your hand on your heart. And just really settling into the invitation that we will be making in this short space today. Let's just lovingly and gently notice what arises. There's no way you need to get to. There's nothing you need to do. Lovingly notice, gently notice, or whatever feeling arises, notice. What does it feel like inside yourself? Hmm. Hmm.
Mm.
That's
Janet, thank you. I was feeling so like delicious is probably the best word as you were doing that. And I was, you know, the path of the cherished mother is many, many things, but at its absolute core is this invitation to fully feel oneself, to fully connect with oneself, to fully deepen into oneself, to fully honor oneself. And that's why it felt so delicious, because that is such a gorgeous thing to do, and yet for so many of us can feel hard to find the time for that. So these spaces feel so precious, so delicious, so kind. And I know we're going to talk more, but just to stay in that feeling and in that in its is the essence really of the work that we do in so many ways.
Yeah. And it's so important. And I caught myself because I was like lovingly notice. And I was like, it's like that can make it sound. And it's never my intention, as everyone who knows me know, is that then, it's just about love. And yeah, but it's anger. And it's like, no, that's okay too, sweetheart. Like it's all welcome. Just
Yeah.
And in some ways, when you go inside and it does feel calm and loving, which is really important to honor that was not how I thought you could be, by the way. So if I can do it, then kind of almost think anyone can. But it is just also to really honor in the work that we do, you and I, all the time, is whatever arises, share that, say that. It's all welcome.
Yeah.
I know we've said it so many times, and it can never, I'm not even going to make any excuses actually for saying it again, is your resistance is welcome.
Mm.
Oh, no, that's okay for you, Kate, but not for me. Oh, yes, Janet, but. Or that's okay, but when I do that, there's anger and like it's all welcome.
Mm.
Nothing will be dismissed.
Mm.
Nothing will be. I think you said the other day, like nothing gets put under the carpet. We don't dismiss anything. So I think that's really important, especially at this time of year.
Mm.
So, yeah. Mm.
Yes, this time of year. I think we felt really moved to come on here and acknowledge how this time of year can sort of feel extra intense. Life can feel extra intense, and there can feel like extra demands on us. So yeah, don't know whether you want to speak a bit into that, Janet.
Yeah. I think it and there's so much here, but let's just start to say life, it feels like life out there with all of the expectations and however that looks for many people, and it will look very different, of course. That feels like life is speeding up. Out there is speeding up. Out there is asking us to do more, be more busy. And I don't want to dismiss that that's what it feels like. That is the experience, the lived experience of that busy world. But really, the invitation here and now is to see what really supports us. And I think we talked about this inner knowing, this inner guide. And just for a moment, maybe, peak of curiosity to really think about doing the opposite of responding to that busyness out there. And to pause and to sit and come inside and look at this inner landscape, this inner world that is inside each of us.
Mm. Yeah, I was reflecting yesterday on how addictive adrenaline is. And it can feel quite difficult to come off the adrenaline train. And even this morning, things are quite busy for me here at the moment. And there could have been a temptation just to get on with the list. Not that there is a list. I actually operate without lists, but I kind of know what I need to do next. And I was like, there was a temptation to get on with that. And actually just going outside, even it was like, I don't know, not for very long, but just sticking my fingers into the earth so that my fingers were in the dirt. And spending time looking at the shape of this gorgeous tree outside that has no leaves on it anymore. And it's just magnificent to see its bare branches. That nourished me no end, but the temptation was just to get on. And so I really want to acknowledge that addictiveness of adrenaline, how it can feel so counterintuitive to go against it, because actually our body gets used to it being in our system and just thinks this is the way to cope. And that's what adrenaline's for. It helps us cope with stressful situations. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's a beautiful gift the body has to give us when we need to be in action. And I think you were saying something also about safety, Janet, earlier. Felt really important to acknowledge.
Yeah, especially at this time of year, as ever, But we're here talking about these sort of two sides. It's all one, really, but there's two sides of the Cherished Mother path, which is absolute balm and love and endless compassion of all is welcome. And how that experience for me sort of really softened and changed everything. So I don't want, and we know that that is just the gift. And then we've also got this sort of other path that asks us to look at ourselves in a slightly different way and to learn to grow. And I'm being disturbed. Yes, you could come. Sorry, Thomas wants to come and get the dog. Look, might they go? Like an inner sovereignty and a growth, and having this phenomenal capacity to change. But at this moment, when there's, as you said, this sort of this adrenaline running in our systems, and for each of us, it potentially is going to look quite differently. And I actually, Kate, would say, I'm going to say 100% certain that anyone listening to this knows what their coping mechanisms are.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that just for a moment is just to honor and welcome that in.
Mm-hmm.
Because you spoke to yours. Yeah, I just genuinely, with all the love in the world, would invite everyone to, with no shame, with no needing to change, what are the ways that we cope in a world that I think simply like creates so much overwhelm, creates so much intensity, and causes us often to be addicted to adrenaline.
Mm.
And then I'm going to ask you, Kate, what would you say? Would you even meet yourself, I suppose, if you want to, or other people? What would you say to that part of us, those coping mechanisms, those ways that we know we do, but we know it's not quite right, and we're going to honor, and that's okay.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it might be eating, it might be quite simple, eating a lot of Christmas cake, or something small, or something bigger. But let's just say.
I just love that, because it's like you've just brought those two sides, or those two pillars of the Cherished Mother together so clearly in my mind, because it isn't until we bring love and compassion and understanding and just curiosity and witnessing and seeing of the ways that we may have developed over the years, often starting in childhood, the ways that we've developed to cope with stressors on us, or what we perceive to be stressors on us, or what we perceive to be difficult or unsafe situations for us. We develop these, so clever and so brilliant, and actually such loving coping mechanisms, because all the time our system, ourself, our soul is working to try and to keep us safe, to keep us here, to keep us putting one foot in front of the other. And so I absolutely loved that invitation you made there for us to see those coping mechanisms, not as something to just toss away or trample on or be angry about or annoyed about that we've created, but actually to see them for the beautiful serving things that they are.
Yeah.
And that could sound strange because sometimes, like, one of my coping mechanisms when I'm really sort of up against it would be to actually shout and point blame at others.
Yes.
So it's not a very pretty looking coping mechanism. Or it could be to swear at the driver in front of me who's just behaved in my mind as he shouldn't. And where I live in Albania at the moment, there's lots of that. So I'm really, but yeah, so just to say these coping mechanisms, although I'm talking about them with love, they don't always look loving.
Yeah.
Or they don't always look beautiful, but they are what we need in that moment to cope.
Yeah.
And I think what you're inviting us to see is that there's no blame or shame in that. It actually makes logical sense. And that was very helpful for me to see when I was first introduced to this idea, that it actually makes rational, logical sense.
It changed. I mean, I know it's funny because you and I always have this thing is, oh, we don't want to talk about Janet stopping drinking because it's not about the alcohol, but it essentially was a coping mechanism, which everyone knows, by the way. I mean, like, we all know. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with having a drink. And that's one of the reasons I know that I don't particularly talk about it. But I had shamed myself so much about it. And I was thinking it's then like, oh, I need to read another book. And especially with New Year as upon us, is there will be this tendency out there, what we're told in this modern world, with here's another book, how to do whatever, how to stop shouting at drivers, for example. Okay. And but I need that book, I need that. And again, it's just to really loving and notice that adrenaline that occurs with that. I need to get over this. And yeah, the difference between that energy, which essentially is what it is, and bringing the love and bringing the understanding to that part of us that is so innocently and so beautifully. And this was just like, oh, this keeps me safe. It's such a different energy than there is something wrong with me. I need to stop this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know where I'd like you to talk to next, but let me see what
Yeah. I was feeling into that.
I want to question.
Say again.
And then I think I want to ask you a direct sort of point you, but what arises you in this moment to share?
I think maybe ask your question, and then if it's related to this, and then I might go where I was going to go.
All right. I hope you can hold two threads of thought. I wanted to ask you about that part of us, that inner part of us that
Mm-hmm.
keeps us safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted you to talk around that.
And that is where I was going to go. So that's absolutely perfect. Yeah, and that's the thing, that I'm hesitating to sort of go there because I feel like what you've brought to the surface here is so precious and such an important step that I will say what I'm going to say, but I don't want that to take away from this first step of just noticing and lovingly, or with loving curiosity, sort of inquiring into these ways that we cope and just honoring them, as you said, and exploring the idea of not shaming them or not criticizing them, but just honoring them and being like, okay, interesting, yeah, interesting.
And that sounds, I can totally hand on heart acknowledge that old Janet would find that impossible. but it did shift
For what
everything.
reasons would she have found it impossible?
Because it felt like shame would make you change, which I think is probably what we, in all honesty, will have, is the almost, I suppose, like a psychological method, a modern method, a book method. But yeah, everything out there is based on that. If I can get you into enough shame, then you'll change. Yeah.
Parenting too, you know, those adages you hear, like, oh, you've let yourself down there, you can do better than that. You know, yeah. And then we take that on and use that internally.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I think people say that. I mean, I think you meant that to ourselves as a mother, but I think people say that to children as well.
Oh no, I actually meant it first.
Oh, what,
People
to the
saying
child?
it to
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
Then you hear it as a child and you
Yeah.
start to use that in your relationship with yourself.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we've kind of, without going into too much detail, Kate, we've mentioned that child, which is where what my question was asking you to talk to. And I honour the fact that you were sitting with that first step.
Yeah. And maybe I will just say a tiny bit, which is because I often need to know, well, why am I doing something? And
Yeah.
so I'm just going to say a tiny bit about the sort of second part of this, which is that bringing this loving curiosity to ourselves. Okay, so, you know, why is it that I'm so triggered by this, or I'm having to use this coping mechanism to cope with this? That sort of inquiry is so loving towards ourselves because ultimately it helps to reveal, okay, I'm reacting like that because actually, truly, whatever the thing is just too much for me. I actually think maybe I need to restructure the week so that things don't get quite so intense on a Thursday doing this and that or whatever it is. You start to see that actually there's perhaps a more loving to yourself way to go about life. And when I say more loving to yourself, I also mean really more loving to this inner child that you've been talking about. Because it's that inner child who isn't feeling good about life, who will cause us to kick off or will cause us to try to run faster or to cope with the feelings of essentially insecurity that part of us is feeling inside of us. So I say this sort of, I'm just tentatively saying it, Janet, because it's not a quick fix. This is a deep journey of understanding all aspects of ourselves, and we are very multifaceted and multi-layered. But yes, that's sort of the purpose of this kind of inquiry.
Yeah. I think it is really, I love the way you sort of settle the understanding because we do, and it's a really beautiful thing. We have this amazing mind and we don't necessarily use it in the right way, and we haven't been taught to in the modern world to use our thoughts in the right way. But we are intelligent, and it is really, really important to say that I can't know what I'm trying. I just want to really honor that part of us that'll be like, yeah, but why? But why? But what are they talking about? This won't work. Like all of those questions to really say, okay, yeah, we get you. Because it can feel impossible if someone's just suggesting, let's take a look inside.
Yeah. And I remember feeling very impatient, like, yeah, but short, like, really? You know, all those sorts of feelings when I was, which, yeah, need honoring because it can feel unsafe in itself to pause and to take time to go inside. And not just to be like, well, I just need a better to-do list, or I just need a better system, or I just need to, I just,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have sisters in us, in that we've sort of we've sat with all of that. We know those feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to add on that, Janet?
No, I just really want to honour and just is our behaviours, our coping mechanisms, whatever they are there to actually support us and keep us safe.
Mm.
And we don't offer a quick fix. I think we're already honest about that. We keep honouring that as that for now, what we are suggesting, inviting people into would just be the most gentle of first steps. And we were talking before we sort of went live, and you so beautifully said something like, it will feel like nothing. It won't feel enough. But actually, that's great because it doesn't give us a lot to do, which is brilliant. But we know, and there is going to have to be an element of trust here, I suppose, that this first step is the only place to start.
Mm.
Can you put that into your own words?
Yeah. You said something about the coping mechanisms keeping us safe just then. And I was thinking, yes, they're here to keep us safe until such time that something else becomes available. Which will happen. However, those other possibilities won't become available until where we're at right now and how our system is operating right now is fully seen and understood and honoured and not shamed and not dismissed and not swept under the carpet, or not just, oh, I wish I was better at this, or I wish I didn't get so overwhelmed by blah. Or so that's why staying here in this first step is so crucial, because nothing else will come available until we've done this piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
That links back to, because we started a couple of weeks ago with accessing more parts of ourselves, which is this invitation that there is absolute possibility of change. But to get to those other parts without this step is impossible.
Mm.
We can't jump. So
yes. And actually, this step is, in fact, a really practical way of inviting our sovereign self to begin to sort of be more fully on the scene, because it's such a loving act that we're inviting you into to witness yourself. It's a sovereign act, in fact, because it's not coming from fear or lack or shame or a need. It's a choosing, a sovereign choosing to sort of invite that loving curiosity about what is going on for you now. Why are these coping mechanisms here? What are these coping mechanisms? How have they been keeping you safe? That is an extremely loving and sovereign, if I may say, act. Yes.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm just going to put all of this into just to say.
Yeah.
And the reason that is so, like, well, why we do the work we do is because as that sovereign part of ourselves grows, we stop feeling at the mercy of life. We stop feeling at the mercy of other people. We stop feeling at the mercy of the drivers in front of you. And we begin to feel more settled, more grounded, more powerful, if you like, inside, more capable, more all the things that I know a lot of the women that work with us long to feel more regularly. So again, to help the mind know where this is all going, I just want
Yeah.
to peace.
Yeah.
I need that.
Totally. And all of those things. And for me, it was about finally, and it was like being able to grow, being able to change. It's like, oh, I can actually change. It's that energy. Whoa. No, I can, and interestingly, then it can become more me, but that's another story. But it was like, I was so thought that I could not change.
Mm.
So, Kate, shall we write out the sort of invitation, or shall we sort of talk it through and then write it out? We've just to really offer that, and you mentioned it just then about just notice it. I think it's just like just that energy of awareness. Just be
Loving curiosity.
Curiosity, yeah, absolutely. And it could be, this could be really lovely, is that you have your morning cup of tea or cup of coffee, or I think most people do that, other than my husband. And at some point during that cup of tea or coffee, you can just say, I'm going to set the intention for the day to notice, to become aware. And then just see throughout the day when you do notice, when you do bring that awareness to yourself, as opposed to having to. Like, and if you get to the end of the day and you notice that you haven't, that's okay. It is not another thing to do.
No. Yeah.
And both, this is it's the first step, but it is also the ongoing practice. This is, and it just becomes more natural and more normal. Like it just happens. You and I both do this on a daily basis, almost probably now unconsciously.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's a really, it really, it's the first step, and it's ongoing.
Yeah.
Any other messages?
I'm wishing everybody peace, and holding the vision for all of us when we do feel overwhelmed, or like life's just speeding up and we notice our breath getting shallower. Maybe just to walk out into your garden or just out in the street, touch a tree, put your fingers into the soil in somebody's flower bed, and just give yourself a few moments to just breathe. You don't need to think anything, you don't need to do anything, just be there. And it's such a radical act in the face of all the busyness this time of year. So busy, I've got so much to do that, because you're not just doing that for yourself. You are sort of radically shifting the whole soup of energy that we're all living in to be doing that. I just imagine all of us in our pockets all around the world taking those moments and just stopping for a moment, being with ourselves and the trees.
And just sometimes, simple act of just putting that hand there. There are many reasons for it, but in this simple way that can connect us with the breath. Just brings us back to the breath, which breathes life. Breath life is just so important. Anyway, I could feel myself wanting to do my shamanic teachings, but let's just say it's so important that this act here just brings us back to that breath.
Okay.
Lots and lots of, and let's offer the love and the joy of this beautiful time of year amidst the chaos. There can be joy and love and actual peace in chaos. It's important to remember. Yeah. Lots of love.